So my name is Tony Gonzalez from Made in Metal, and today we are talking to Douglas Docker because last November the new Dockers Guild was released. The title is The Mystic Technocracy, Season 2, The Age of Entropy. So, hello Douglas, how are you?
Hello, everybody. Hello, Tony. Thank you for having me here. I'm doing great today. It's a sunny day here in Italy, so I'm very happy.
It's a sunny day here in Madrid, but it's really cold, 0 degrees.
Yes, here too. Very cold. Still winter.
Very cold. Yes. Douglas, you are the owner of the Black Swan School. Tell me about the school, where is, when it was created, and what do you teach there?
Okay, Black Swan was born in 2013, so 10 years ago. And until COVID, it was a very busy school. It was specialized in rock music, so we had all the instruments, of course, but we also had courses that other schools don't do. So we had courses like rock theory, rock history. We had courses in English to improve pronunciation for the singers in the recording studios, master classes and workshops of all kinds. And we also organized concerts, festivals, competitions. So it was a very, very busy time. I really enjoyed it. And then when COVID came, by that time it had been many years that I had been doing this. And so I kind of started being a little bit tired of coming back home at 3 o'clock in the morning every night. And so I kind of pulled the plug. So I stopped all the activities, all the organization, all the concerts. I still teach a little bit. I teach the language department is still active. The music department, only keyboards and piano are active these days because I decided to focus basically 100% on my productions. So Dockers Guild, of course, and other projects that I'm working on right now.
So, because apart from the school, there is another project called Black Swan Universe. Please explain me about the project.
All right. This is an idea that came out when I started writing lyrics for other metal operas. As you probably know, I wrote all the lyrics for the first Vivaldi Metal Project album, and I wrote also all the lyrics for the Chronomaster Project album. And when I wrote the lyrics for the Vivaldi Metal Project, the first song of that album actually has a character called Eternity. And this character was featured on the first Dockers Guild video from 12 years ago. It's a song from the first album called Darwin's Tears. And the character was actually interpreted by my wife. And so there was a first connection between these two projects already back then. And then the Chronomaster project came about. And Fabio Rancati, the mastermind behind the project, said, well, maybe we could connect our two operas as well. And could you write a song that works well in both worlds and that we will add as a ghost track at the end of the album? So I wrote a song called The Android Messiah. And The Android Messiah is basically sung by the main character of Dockers Guild, a character called Jack Heisenberg. And he's singing about a very happy moment with his wife. It's a Friday night. They're having some wine, watching some TV. And all of a sudden, they come across a TV series called The Android Messiah. And so basically, my characters are watching a TV program about the characters of the other opera. And so all three operas are now connected in what we call the Black Swan universe. The idea is to build something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something similar like that, something that I believe has not been done yet. I could be wrong, but I don't think there has been any large connection between different rock operas by different artists. So it's a first.
Last year, 2022, the 3 CDs were released. And tell me, how was the process? And how can you be involved in 3 different metal operas in just a year?
Well, you you have to pull the plug on the music school because there's just not enough time to do everything. So actually, it's very strange, because going back in time, when I was in high school, I always had very, very bad scores in writing and Italian language and stuff like that. I really was pretty bad, or at least my teacher thought so. And it's really ironic that now as an adult, I am, as a job, I'm writing lyrics for other projects. And writing lyrics comes very easy to me. It takes me not more than a couple hours to sit down and to listen to the song, There's a process involved, of course, because they already have the melodies, and so I have to kind of like work on the metrics and the accents and all that, and make sure that the words actually fit with what has already been written. But it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and there's not much pressure because you don't have any recording involved. You're just typing and being creative, and so I really enjoy that. So I've done the first Vivaldi album, all of it, and then 2 songs on the second Vivaldi album, and then the entire Chronomaster project album as well. And then I had to produce my own album, of course, and that was much more complicated because I had to, of course, write the songs, involve 18 special guests from around the world. So I had to coordinate that. I had to record pre-production demos for every song so that the 18 special guests knew exactly what they had to play, and to integrate all this so that it would make sense musically. Otherwise, it quickly degenerates into chaos. So you have to be very careful.
Yes, that means that when you write lyrics, you record the melody of the lyrics with the lyrics and send it in a demo?
That could, yes, actually, yes. I sing all the melodies and all the lyrics of my albums. In the, well, we call them pre-production demos, so that the artist can work on them, and then that makes it really easy for them because they don't have to guess what they have to sing, and which might lead to mistakes or things that I really don't want. And so by having the demos, they just have to add their own personality, their own voice, and maybe modify something to make it better, because it's always great to have another point of view, of course. And so it always starts from my voice, and then it builds from there.
So you write the lyrics from Android Messiah.
Yeah.
The character is watching the television, Android Messiah on television. But
that's right.
Android Messiah does really exist as a serial? No.
No, it exists as an album. So the story in the album is actually the TV series. Docker's Guild was also designed as a TV series. As you know, there are 5 seasons, and there will be 4 books, so it alternates between seasons and books. And that is really designed as a TV series. This last album in particular was a multimedia project. I don't think many fans are really aware of that, but there's not only the album which tells a story, but there were also 12 videos that were released. So basically every song on the album had its own video, and we had characters and actors and models and singing as well. And all this, if you watch the 12 videos, it's like watching 12 episodes of a TV series. And on top of that, we also had the illustrated storybook, so people could read both the lyrics of the songs and the detailed story, the detailed synopsis that cannot be squeezed into a single song. In fact, I think I've got it somewhere. Hold on, if I can show you. This is it's the illustrated storybook that we published last year, and originally it was only for the crowdfunding people, so people that invested in the CD about a year ago already, and we made this for them. But then we had several copies left, so I decided now 1 year has passed, we're going to release it also to the general public, and it's quite cool actually. I'll show you some of the pages. You see, you've got illustrations like this with the main characters. All the graphics were done by me and by my artist, Carl Andre Beckstone, who does a lot of artwork for heavy metal and hard rock projects. And then you've got a lot of text. Every song has several pages of text, which describes the story in great detail. So it's a great item to have. It's very entertaining.
Yes. Douglas, maybe I will ask you again about some details from the book. You write the lyrics, but who wrote the music from Android Messiah? Android
Messiah, okay. The music was written mostly by the guitar player. His name is Luigi Yamundo. And I'm actually not the mastermind of this project, so to get all the details behind the music, you would have to ask Fabio Rancati, because he's the one that put everything together. But most of the music was written by Luigi Yamundo, and then there are other credits. Maybe the drummer wrote a part, or the bass player wrote another part. Several melodies were written by the singer. So there was a lot of collaborating in that project in particular. And then I came at the end when the songs were already basically finished. They had their singer sing the final melodies with fake words, basically. and all I had to do was match his melodies with my words, and so it was a pretty simple task actually. You just have to do it, and like I said, a couple hours per song, so it was very enjoyable. I really like to do that.
I have a curiosity about the Android Messiah, and it's the song Generation Clash.
Yes.
Because in Generation Clash, the voice is the guest is Chris Boltondahl from Gravedigger. When they invite the guests, did they tell you who were the guests and how to write for them, or not? It was more general.
They told me who the guests were. I know several of them personally, actually, because some of them also sang on Docker's Guild. Like Amanda Somerville is a character on the Chronomaster project and also on the Docker's Guild project. And I've known her personally for several years now. She's a lovely lady and a fantastic singer. So they gave me the names of most of the artists, but since I didn't have to write the melodies, I only had to write the words. The only focus was really on telling the story, not so much focusing on the kind of voice that they had, because the songs and melodies had already been written before. So well, I was not really involved in trying to write for that particular artist.
There are links between Docker's Guild and the Chronomaster project. And,
yes.
But apart from this, Vivaldi metal project is very different. So you were involved writing lyrics. Are we talking about Epiclassica, the CD?
Okay, for Epiclassica, I wrote two lyrics, two songs. One is Dies Irae, and the other one is Tragic Serenade. Those are the two songs that I wrote lyrics for. And the lyric wise, for the first album I wrote all the lyrics, and there was a very specific concept there which had to do with the four seasons of man. And the lyrics in that album are very analytical, I would say. They are really I don't know, I got inspired by early opera, actually. The early opera from 1600, more or less, when opera was born, was very strange. They had characters that represented concepts. So they had the soul, they had anger, they had these kind of archetypes. Let's call them archetypes. They didn't have persons, people. And so I kind of used that approach on the first Vivaldi metal project. And it worked quite well for that album. But then for the second album, Mysteria, who's the mastermind behind the project, he said, okay, enough analytical stuff. For the second album, we want to talk about feelings. And so we want to go through the seasons of man's feelings, not about the seasons of his age. And so I wrote in a very different way, very, very different way. One song is very angry, one song is very sad. Dies Irae, of course, is about the anger of God, and so it's quite an aggressive song lyrically and musically. Tragic Serenade is just a very tragic love story. Doesn't end too well.
Yes. So you define Docker's Guild as a massive metal space opera. Why?
That wasn't me. I don't know who came up with that, but that's what everybody's saying. My official, it's very difficult to define Docker's Guild because there are many influences, many styles. So with the record company at that time, 12 years ago now, we decided to call it a prog metal space opera because it's a space opera dealing with science fiction, kind of in the vein of Star Wars or something like that, or Flash Gordon, and it's mostly prog metal, but if you listen to it, there's also a lot of stuff that is not metal at all. There's a lot of hard rock, there's a lot of AOR, melodic rock, especially in the way I treat the vocals and the choirs and the harmonies and all that. And there's also some influences that have nothing to do with metal or rock, really. I'm a big fan of David Bowie, of Duran Duran, and Jean-Michel Jarre as a keyboardist, and so those influences all went into into the project and made it what it is. So that's probably one of the reasons why it sounds a little bit different compared to everybody else.
Yes. Now is the moment when we are focused in seasons and books.
Okay.
Yes. Even when the title of the new CD is The Mystic Technocracy, Season 2 is the third CD. Tell me, how did you organize this story and what are the main differences between season and books?
Okay, well, first of all, it only took me 30 years to organize all this because I started writing for Dockers Guild back in 1990. So that was 32 years ago. And basically it never happened in those days because first I was too young to really develop the story like it came out, like it's coming out now. And the technology just wasn't there to record and produce such a massive project without spending hundreds of thousands of euro. And now that we have computers and plugins and all that stuff, it's much easier. You can do it at home, basically. So it's much easier. Originally, it was going to be one album. And many of the songs that are appearing on the different albums were written in the mid-90s with a Japanese lady called Mio Jäger, who is the guitar player for Frantic Amber, a death metal band in Sweden. They are almost all girls except the drummer. And she was my girlfriend at the time. And so we worked together on what became Dockers Guild for about a year. So every album has at least one song that we wrote together. Then I put everything away for a number of years and I picked it up again after 2000. And one album then became two, then became three. And then I decided, okay, let's do this well. I cannot tell this story well in one album. I'll make 5 albums. So I had 5 seasons. It's inspired by TV series. Every series has different seasons. And it was particularly inspired by a science fiction series of the 90s called Babylon 5. Science fiction TV series from the 90s. And so the whole structure comes from that TV series. 5 years, one story. And then I told myself it would be nice to have 4 more albums between the seasons that focus on a particular aspect of the main character, Jack Heisenberg. And so, so far we've released season 1, of course, and season 2. And between the 2 seasons, we released Book A, which focuses on presenting the character Jack Heisenberg and his main hobby, which is science fiction. So Book A was actually rearrangements of science fiction soundtracks from the 70s, especially BBC material that I loved so much when I was a kid. So stuff like Space 1999, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, Doctor Who, and things like that. The press hated it.
Yes.
Well, most of the press really hated Book A because they didn't like an album made of covers, basically, and they didn't like the fact that it was all a science fiction album of science fiction soundtracks. They just couldn't get it. So I got a lot of bad reviews. Got some really good ones, but the album actually sold quite well, so I'm pretty happy with it. It came out nice, and I still like it very much.
Now that you mentioned the TV series, it's curious that you choose the name Heisenberg because it's the main character in the famous TV series Breaking Bad. So why did you choose the name Heisenberg?
I did not know that.
No?
No, I did not know that. The reason why I chose Heisenberg is because every character that is basically good in my story is named after an astronomist, an astronomer, a physicist, or another kind of scientist. So we've got Heisenberg as the main character. We got Lucy Higgs, which is taken from Higgs, a famous quantum mechanics scientist. And all the other characters that are good are actually taken from different kinds of scientists because they are working for science. The other characters, which are very bad, including Cardinal Yersinia, there will be another very bad character that will appear in season 3, and his name will be Crodegang Lisa or Rhabdos, which is, they're all taken from diseases. So Yersinia is from the plague, the guy who discovered the plague bacteria, Yersin. And Lisa or Rhabdos is rabies. And so these characters are really bad. So they're killing a lot of people. And so they get disease names.
Is the word multiverse or is the word universe which better match with all these musical journeys that you are writing? Why?
Okay, the Dockers Guild story is in a single universe. There are no parallel universes or anything like that. The Chronomaster project, from what I understand, but you would have to ask Fabio, he has designed it as a multiverse or with parallel universes and things like that. So his story is actually more in that direction. And he's just made one album, but he's going to make more. I think they're working on the second one now. So that's going to develop further as things go by. So Yeah, in my case, only one universe, however, no parallel dimensions.
So, but maybe Docker's Guild will be part of the multiverse in Android Messiah.
We've talked about it. Yeah, we've talked about it, and it could happen. So, good guess.
Yes. So I was really surprised when I listened to a cover from Yes in the Mystic Technocracy Season 2, Machine Messiah, you know, that is from the 1980 the drama CD.
Yes,
And
drama.
tell me, how did you take it? Because the lyric of the song matched with the story, or why?
That's right. That's right. Another good guess. Basically, it's a little challenge that I gave myself when I started the project. Every album will have 2 instrumental songs, and every album will have 2 covers. And the covers have to be chosen based on the story that I've already written, and the lyrics of those covers have to fit the story that I've already written. So it's not the other way around. I don't choose the cover and then write a story based on the cover. They really have to fit, and they have to be coming out from bands that I really admired. So some of my heroes when I was younger, and some of them still are. I mean, Yes was a major influence in my musical development, both as a musician, as a keyboard player, and as a songwriter. Especially, a lot of my songwriting style comes, especially strangely enough, because I'm a keyboard player basically, but my songwriting often comes from Chris Squire and the kind of music that he used to write for Yes. And so yeah, I chose Machine Messiah because it's probably the heaviest and darkest song Yes has ever recorded. The lyrics are very dark and ominous, and they really fit the end of the world atmosphere that there is in season 2, which is a much darker album compared to the first 2 ones. And that song was a real challenge because it's 10 minutes long, it's extremely intricate, and I'll tell you a little story about the recording process of this song, because I was amazed actually. When I did the pre-production demo, and it probably took me 2 or 3 months to make it, because I had to fake play it on the computer using samples and loops for the drums and programming the drums and all that, and so that the musicians could actually play their parts based on what I had recorded. And then when I went in the studio, and the drummer Helly, who played on the whole album, she walked into the studio and she recorded the entire album in a day and a half. A day and a half. And she played Machine Messiah twice, and she nailed it. I couldn't believe it.
Good.
I couldn't believe it. And then the bass player came in, Luca Piso. He sat all relaxed with the chart and his bass in his hands. Okay, record. He played it once and he nailed it. And the guitar player took him a little bit longer. It took him a whole afternoon, because of the guitar parts are the worst ones, because Steve Howe is, you know, how he plays, and it's solos everywhere and very intricate music. And so he nailed it in about 1 afternoon, and I couldn't believe it. It took me 3 months to make the demos, and then these guys walk in the studio, and after half a day they're finished. So
They are really gifted, musically.
Yes, they are.
Gifted. Yes.
Very much.
But to me, it was really interesting, Douglas, because now that you told me that you are a fan of Yes and Steve Howe, you know that drama are considered a minor CD in the story of the Yes after Relayer or the Yes album and things like that. And then I have a special love for drama.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's considered well, everybody hated that album at the time because they thought Yes had completely sold out, and they took the Buggles in, Jeff Downes and Trevor Horn, who had made basically a synth pop album with the Buggles, and it's a great album, by the way. It's one of my favorite albums of all times. And but Drama is a fantastic album. It's very progressive. It's got a lot of intricate and very complicated songs, but it opens the door to the 80s because the production is more modern for those days. It's more aggressive compared to old Yes stuff, and for me, it's one of their top albums. I just love it. Fantastic album.
So previously, you told me that you are fans of bands from the 80s, like Duran Duran or so, and then I thought that maybe I was wrong, but there are moments in this CD, for example, in songs like Atlantis Town or Crusaders, when I imagine that I recognize certain influences from Alan Parsons Project. Am I right or wrong?
This time you didn't guess right. So 2 out of 3.
Okay.
Actually, Alan Parsons is a fantastic project and band and artist. I've seen them live recently, and I like them very much, but they were never really an influence songwriting wise. Let's see. Atlantis Town is not my song. It's the other cover on the album. It comes from a French band called the Rockets. The Rockets were a band that were basically the European Kiss. They dressed up like aliens. They were bald. They had silver makeup and the science fiction outfits, and they played space rock, electronic space rock, influenced by Kraftwerk and things like that. So Atlantis Town comes from them. And Crusades, however, definitely has kind of a funky feeling to it. I think it's the funkiest song I've ever written, at least for Docker's Guild. I could not even tell you where the influence comes from. Maybe it does come a bit from Duran Duran, but I don't know. It just came out that way. I just sat down and wrote it, and that's what came out.
Now that you told me, I remember that it was in the 80s, maybe in the 80s, I hate the Rockets. Yes.
Ah.
I hate the Rockets. I listened to CDs and then I forgot forever.
Yeah.
So now that you mentioned, maybe I should take and reconsider and listen to some song to see.
Well, the Rockets have always had a very divisive audience because there are people like me that it's like kind of like Kiss. There are people that love them and they've loved everything they've done and they keep following them. And through the years, I became friends with a couple of them actually, and they actually helped me to transcribe the lyrics for the songs because the lyrics were not in the original LPs, and so some of the words I couldn't figure out, and so they helped me to fill in the missing words. So they were very nice. But then there are other people that have hated the Rockets or Kiss with a passion since the beginning because they thought they were just a marketing project more than a real music project. And so it's okay. I accept that. And, everybody's got their own flavors.
Yes. So you told me before that you have been working with bands like Frantic Amber. And I remember that I read that you worked with Tyrion too.
Yes,
Tell me,
that's correct.
what have you done in both bands?
Well, since I came back in Italy and set up my recording studio here, that was 2008. Once in a while, I get a request from some band or some project to collaborate, maybe put some lyrics like the 2 metal operas we talked about before, but more often some keyboard parts or maybe even some singing. So I've been doing a few sessions for other people's projects, or not even sessions, more like special guesting, play on a few songs and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun because it allows me to do something else, which is not my own productions. It's not really a career that I want to focus on full time. I've never been a very good session man. I prefer to work on my own stuff, but once in a while it's fun. So with Frantic Amber, I recorded keyboards for 2 songs on their first album, and I was a special guest there. I worked quite closely with Tony Mills from the band Shy and TNT. He was a great friend of mine. As you know, he sadly died a couple of years ago. And what did I do with him? I wrote 2 songs for his album, Over My Dead Body, and I arranged 2 more songs, including a version of My Death by David Bowie. He was also a big fan of David Bowie, so we had a lot in common musically. And so I'm featured on 4 songs there, and I'm even singing on his album, which is ridiculous because Tony was an amazing singer, and I'm not a singer. And somehow I ended up singing on one of his songs. So that was kind of fun. And regarding Therion, actually, I didn't work with them musically at all. What happened is that they came here to Turin and they shot a beautiful video called Adulruna Rediviva, which is very long. It's more like a short movie. And with that, they had a board game called 011. And in the board game, they had the characters. The characters were actually the musicians in the band. And it's a nice story about the end of the world, according to Vikings, Ragnarök. And the musicians are trying to save the world and fight the big bad wolf. I I forgot his name, Fenrir, so I think it's Fenrir, out of Nordic mythology. So anyway, to make a long story short, they asked me to do the voiceovers for the documentaries from the shootings. And so I am basically narrating this documentary, or the series of documentaries. And they also asked me to translate the brochure in the game. So that was a strange thing for me too, because I am collaborating with a very well-known band, but not at a musical level. I was involved with language, basically.
Interesting. So, but this is in the new Dockers Guild CD. There are 17 special guests. And tell me how and why did you select them?
All right.
In general terms.
It's been a tradition to have special guests with Dockers Guild, and every album had a theme. So the first album had basically an AOR and melodic rock theme. So most of the musicians were taken from 80s bands that were famous in those days. So I had John Payne from Asia, I had Jörn Edman from Yngwie Malmsteen, and Tony Mills from Shy. So that was the general direction. The second album, Bouquet, had another theme. I selected an exclusively female lineup. So all the special guests were ladies. And this one was a little bit different. The theme was to have two different teams. The first team was an international team. And so I chose, of course, Amanda Somerville, who has been singing on each one of my albums so far. I was very lucky to have Anneke Van Giersbergen on the album too. I had for the growls and screams, which I've used for the first time in my life. I've never done any growling. I have Elizabeth from Frantic Amber. And for the musicians, I have Joel Hoekstra from Whitesnake and the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and other names of that sort. So that was one team. It was the international team. And then I decided to use some local talents, because producing Dockers Guild it's a very lonely adventure. You're in the studio, you're pre-producing, you're writing your songs, you're building your empire, and going crazy. And but it's all by yourself. And after 10 years of doing this, I said, I need some human contact. I need to have somebody to work in the studio with someone and then have a laugh, have a joke, and talk. And so I hired a bunch of local friends, actually, that are very, very highly skilled and very good, that come from the Turin area where I live. And that was the second half of the team. And that gave me a chance to actually walk into the studio, have somebody else do the recording and the mixing. I have a wonderful sound engineer. His name is Alberto, who does a fantastic job. He mixed the second half of the album, actually, and he mastered the album too. And that gave me a chance to have a little social life, to get out and maybe have lunch or dinner with us, the guests, and talk about life and music and things like that. So I was very happy to do that. It was a new experience for me to meet people for a change.
We were talking about Amanda Somerville.
Amanda, sure.
Yes, it was because his work in Avantasia, or you know her from her previous work?
Let's see. How did I go? I was looking, actually, I tried other singers before, including some famous Italian singers. And I was not really sure who to choose, but I needed a female voice for the last song of the first album. A song's called Black Swan. And it's a duet between a male voice and a female voice. So I tried several, and some didn't want to. Some could not. Some asked for an outrageous amount of money. I had a special guest, I will not tell you who, but she wanted $5,000 to sing one song, $5,000, which was, of course, absurd, at least at this level of production. And so finally, I started noticing that Amanda was quite well known. I didn't know her at the time. And so I wrote to her, and she was very happy to do it. And that's how our collaboration started, which turned into a friendship, because we became friends and we've been working together on the various Dockers Guild albums ever since.
And Anneke Van Giersbergen, you worked with her previously. Why did you take her?
Well, I think everybody wants to have Anneke on their album. So we all do. And I said, it's kind of funny, because I had to say thank you to COVID for having Anneke, because of course, during the 3 years of the lockdown and nobody doing anything, nobody touring, nobody working really, many musicians put out special offers and special deals to get some work. And Anneke put out a competition where she would select 10 bands and record for them one song at a very discounted price, which of course singing on 10 bands for her was a good amount of money in the end. So I won the competition with 9 other bands. And actually, I did not need her for one song. I needed her for little pieces from the final suite of the album, Into the Dark Ages, which is a 15-minute suite of 5 different movements. And she would interpret a character called Casilda. And so I asked the manager, I said, instead of doing one full song, could she do those little pieces of these 5 movements and consider it as one song? And she did. And she did a fantastic job. Of course, I'm extremely happy to have her because it's not something everybody gets to have. And so I'm very happy. And there she is on the album.
Yes. So these women usually or from time to time collaborate with some groups, but something that to me was really weird was to find Joel Hoekstra, because he usually has her own White Snake or his own band. And now tell me, why did you decide to invite Joel Hoekstra?
Good question. This is a completely different story. In 1992, I went to Los Angeles, Hollywood, specifically to study keyboards, rock keyboards at the Musicians Institute. It's one of the most famous schools for rock music and more. I was in the keyboard department, and Joel was a student in the guitar department. And so we were basically classmates or schoolmates anyway. And the funny thing is we never played together. We spent 1 year in that school. I had my gang of friends, and I played with a lot of people in the school, but I never played with him, and he did the same with these guys. And so we eventually met again at the Frontiers Festival here in Italy, because at that time, he was a member of Night Ranger. And so I went up to him and I said hi and reintroduced myself and all that. And so we started talking about the old days and the school. And so when the time came to find a guitar player for this new album, I thought, well, why not Joel? Since we've never played together in real life, at least we can collaborate on this album. And I was very mean to him because I gave him the most difficult song to play. The song is called K475, and it's actually a readaptation of a Mozart fantasy, which is, of course, is written for keyboards. And I made him play Mozart's keyboard parts on the guitar, which is basically impossible to do. And guess what? He did it. He did a fantastic job. And so I'm very, very happy with his collaboration. And he also played all the guitars in the final suite, the 15 minutes of Into the Dark Ages. But he's more featured in a Mozart song because there are many solos there. So he's more featured there. Into the Dark Ages doesn't have any guitar solo, so he's really doing all the rhythm parts.
Yes, this is really interesting. So, and then there is another guest that I consider that she is a woman and she is not a very, very kind, or maybe it's because she doesn't have the opportunity, that it was Nita Strauss.
Yes.
Yes, how did you take her for this?
Well, Nita Strauss is actually only on the bonus track, which is a soundtrack. It's the soundtrack of Space 1999, the TV series from the 70s. And Nita actually played many, many songs on the second album on Bouquet. She was the main guitarist on Bouquet. And like most of the special guests, actually, there were not personal connections. I wrote to them cold, either on Facebook or by email on their websites. I sent them the demos and all that. And the amazing thing is that all my special guests were so impressed with the demos that they immediately accepted to play on my albums. So I'm very, very privileged, and I've been very lucky. The only ones that have not played, I had a few actually that wanted to play but couldn't because they were on tour. One was Ted Poley from Danger Danger. One was Jolene Turner from Rainbow. Probably remember very well, and they couldn't because they were too busy with other projects or touring. But all the other ones I accepted immediately, and Nita was one of those.
Perfect. And there was one that when he or she accepted, you say, "Oh my God, finally!"
Oh my God, I forgot which one. Look, the most exciting one, I have to say, because it was the first one, is when I wrote to Tony Mills. And because originally there were going to be no special guests on Docker's Guild. Originally it was going to be my friends from the Musicians Institute. It was going to be those guys that were going to play on the album. And then things happened. They couldn't do it, or it didn't work out. They didn't have computers, and many problems. And so in the end, I said, okay, let's go shoot high and try with some special guests. Of course, at that time, I was not known at all. And so for me, it was I was scared to write to the first special guest and say, oh my God, you know what? I'm going to get no's from everybody. And Tony Mills was the first one to listen to my music. It's like, oh my God, I've never heard anything like this before. I want to sing on this. And I remember I had the flu, so I was in my pajamas upstairs in my bedroom reading this email. And I ran down the stairs screaming, and my dad was still living with us here. And he was cooking, and he heard me scream from the stairs upstairs all the way down to the kitchen. Oh my God, Tony Mills is on my album. And, you know, now 13 years later, you get used to everything in life. And I don't scream anymore, but I still get excited when somebody says yes to sing or play on my albums. It's always a fantastic feeling every time.
Of course, I understand perfectly. So, Douglas, are you thinking of bringing Docker's Guild alive on tour or something like that?
That is always a tough question. It's a difficult question to answer. Docker's Guild now has been around for at least 12 years, and we have played very few concerts, and they've always been very special events. Like we played for the album release party of the first album 10 years ago, sorry. And it was a beautiful event. We played for several inaugurations of festivals. We played at the inauguration of my school, Black Swan. So it was always like large events with a lot of people. But it's very rare. And the reason why it's very rare is because it's very complicated music. So it takes a long time for people to learn it. And you need the money to be able to actually finance this. And it's very, very difficult. For me, it will be impossible to organize a tour or even a concert with the big special guests. So Docker's Guild has always played with a local side of my connections. It's always been local musicians who are excellent, obviously. They're all very good friends, but I was never able to bring down Amanda or anybody else because it's just too expensive. We're also very theatrical, you know, so we're wearing costumes, there are things happening on stage and all that. So all this has a cost. And sadly, I have to get into the business side of things. We're not selling enough CDs anymore to be able to finance this stuff. So I don't know. And after COVID, touring is even worse than before. It's even more expensive. It's even more difficult. I see bands that are touring in Europe now, and some of them can't even find a bus to go on tour, so they're asking the fans to find them a bus and stuff like that. It's becoming very problematic. So the short answer is I don't know. I would like to. Yeah.
Okay, but taking account last year, you participate in 3 metal operas. What are your plans for 2023? 3 more or more?
There's a lot cooking right now. I'm going to put Docker's Guild to rest for a little bit because the next album is going to be extremely difficult to write and record. Are you sitting? Yes, you're sitting. I'm going to write a Requiem Mass in Latin.
Yes?
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yes, and it's going to be written with the composition techniques of the Middle Ages. So it's going to be a very, very different album. It's going to have big choirs like Gregorian chant and medieval choirs and medieval polyphony. And it's going to be a very classically oriented album. I don't think I will have special guests or many special guests on this one because this will be Book B, by the way. It will focus on another aspect of Jack Heisenberg. So it's going to be a very different album, probably very orchestral, or at least with a lot of choirs and things like that. So I don't think there will be any need for a lot of special guests. So that's coming next for Docker's Guild. But right now I'm working on 2 other albums. The first album I'm working on is a tribute to Keith Emerson, who is another one of my big heroes from the past. And it's a solo album on the piano. So it will be a classical album, only piano, rearranging his music with Emerson, Lake and Palmer only for the piano. And so I already recorded the first half of the album in December, and now I'm practicing for the second half because, as you can imagine, it probably takes at least 6 months to get those songs together to be able to record them and play them well. So that's one project. And then another project that's very strange. I decided to exploit the songs that I've used in the past and that are not part of Docker's Guild. So there is an album that's coming out soon that contains all the songs I wrote back in 1983, 1984, when I was 16 years old. They are the first songs I ever wrote in my life. There are 10 songs, and it's the complete opposite of Docker's Guild. It's very simple music. It's rock, obviously, but it has some country influences. It has some new wave influences. There's no definite style. It's a bit of this and a bit of that. Because I was very young, I was 16 years old, I was experimenting. I didn't really know who I was musically, and so it's a bit of a mixed bag. But I think it will be fun to put them out and see what people think about Douglas Docker when he was a kid.
Okay, Douglas, this is mostly the interview. I saw that you are a very busy man.
Yes, that's right.
Perfect. So it was really a pleasure to talk to you.
For me also. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure. I'm sorry for your technical problems, but obviously we solved them, so that's great. And let me know when the interview or the video or whatever comes out, because I'd love to have a copy or a link, and that would make me very happy. Of course, hello to all the fans out there that might be watching this. And I will send you the pictures very soon, very soon.
Yes.
Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you very much,
Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Me too. Ciao, Tony.
Ciao.